2 months before my wedding, my mother looked me in the eye and said, "You'll understand. He needed it more than you." I smiled. Or at least, I think I did. My face felt frozen, like every muscle had forgotten how to move. Inside, something cracked. I nodded slowly, pretending like I was okay. Like what she just said hadn't torn through the core of everything I'd spent years building. But the truth? I wasn't okay. I was numb. That night, I sat in the dark staring at my phone screen. Not reading, not scrolling, just staring. The soft glow lit up my face, but the rest of the room was drowning in shadows. My hands trembled slightly, fingers twitching with the urge to throw the phone across the room, but I didn't. I couldn't. I was paralyzed by disbelief. All I could hear was her voice replaying over and over in my head. He needed it more than you. Was I not supposed to feel hurt? Was I selfish for wanting my own wedding? For saving for years while working 2 jobs, skipping vacations, saying no to new shoes, coffee dates, dinners out, all for that one day? I had saved $24,000. Every single dollar earned and planned and tucked away for a dream wedding by the ocean. Nothing flashy, just something intimate, warm, personal. Something that felt like me. And now? Gone. My mother sat me down in the living room. The place smelled faintly of lemon polish and fading lilac air freshener, like it always did. Dad was there too, sunk into his recliner, avoiding my eyes. I remember watching the way Mom fidgeted with the sleeve of her cardigan. She never did that unless she was nervous. "Kyle got in a bit of trouble," she began, her voice overly gentle. "And, well, we figured, he's been struggling. You're always so strong, Ava. You always find a way." She paused, then gave me that sad smile, the kind that says, "I know this is going to hurt you, but I'm going to do it anyway. We used your savings to help him get back on his feet." I didn't speak, not right away. I looked at Dad. His eyes darted to the floor. No words, no explanation, just that same tired look he always wore when Mom made decisions and he followed. And Kyle? Of course, he wasn't there. He never was when things got messy. I asked, "How much?" "All of it," she said, blinking hard like that would soften the blow. "He really needed it." I just nodded. My heart was pounding, but my face stayed still. No tears, no yelling, just a weird floating sensation, like I wasn't even in my body anymore, like I was watching it all from outside the window. I said, "Okay," just that. Then I left. Daniel, my fiancé, was waiting for me in the car. When I got in, he looked at me like he could tell something was wrong, his eyebrows knit together, his hand reaching for mine. "What happened?" he asked. I turned to him, my voice barely a whisper. "They gave our wedding fund to Kyle." He blinked. "What?" "All of it," I said, staring out the windshield. "They said I'd understand." Silence. Then Daniel exhaled, long and slow. "So, what do you want to do?" I didn't answer right away. My brain felt like a spinning top, but somewhere, underneath the heartbreak, something else flickered. Not anger, clarity. I looked over at him and said, "We're still getting married. Just not how they think." And in that moment, a new kind of plan began to form. Before all this, my life felt like it was finally aligning. After years of clawing my way up in the marketing world, I'd landed a job that paid well, gave me freedom, and finally allowed me to breathe. I wasn't rich, but I was comfortable, independent, stable, and I was in love. Daniel and I met at a networking event 3 years ago, while everyone else was throwing around buzzwords and pretending to be someone they weren't. He just listened. He asked me how I was actually doing. He remembered that I liked my coffee with oat milk and no sugar. He noticed things. When he proposed, it wasn't flashy. No cameras, no staged rooftop, just us on a hike on top of a hill with the wind in our hair and the city behind us. He pulled out a simple ring and said, "Let's build something real." That's all I ever wanted. And when we started planning the wedding, I told him not to worry about the money. I had it covered. I'd been saving since I was 25, ever since I realized that relying on my family meant signing up for disappointment. Because growing up, everything revolved around Kyle. My younger brother could crash the car, drop out of school, max out credit cards, and my parents would always find a way to excuse it. He's just figuring himself out, they'd say, or he has potential, he just needs time. Meanwhile, I was the responsible one, the fixer, the planner, the one who stayed home during spring breaks to work extra hours, the one who never needed help. At first, I wore that like a badge of honor. Being the strong one made me feel proud. But over time, I realized it was just another way for them to say, "You're on your own." Still, I tried to include them in the planning. I sent Mom pictures of dresses, asked her to taste cakes with me, even suggested Kyle could walk me down the aisle with Dad. She said she was proud of me, that I was doing everything right. But I should have known better. I remember sitting in my little apartment surrounded by swatches of fabric, Pinterest boards, venue quotes, feeling this quiet joy, a soft, steady hum of excitement, the kind that fills your chest when something beautiful is about to happen. I was creating something sacred, a celebration of love, of survival, of finally being seen. But when they took that money, without telling me, without even asking, it was like they reached into my chest and snuffed that joy out like a candle. They didn't just take the cash, they took my moment. They looked me in the face and said he needed it more. Not "you deserve this," not "we're sorry," just that. And the worst part? They expected me to carry on like it didn't matter, like I'd understand, like I'd just downsize to a local hall and move on. But how do you shrink your dream to fit inside someone else's failure? I couldn't. So I sat there, heart pounding, tears long dried up, looking at a future I hadn't expected, and said something I didn't even know I meant until the words came out. "We're still getting married, just not how they think. Because if they weren't going to give me the wedding I deserved, I'd build one without them, and I'd make sure they saw it. But not right away. First, they'd have to believe the lie." The next few days felt like living in someone else's skin. I'd go to work, smile during meetings, answer emails like nothing had happened, but underneath, I was unraveling. Every time I looked at my calendar, saw the countdown to the wedding, I felt like I was choking. The wedding wasn't just a celebration. It was the one thing that made me feel like I mattered. And now, it was a charity case. Mom called 2 days later, casually suggesting we just keep it small, maybe use the community hall down the road. "It'll still be lovely," she said. "You don't need all the fuss." I wanted to scream, not because I needed a lavish wedding, but because she had stolen my choice and was now rewriting the story like she was doing me a favor. Every time she said "we" or "us" or "it's best," my stomach twisted. There was no "we." There was her decision and me expected to smile through it. I started avoiding her calls. Then Kyle texted me, "Thanks for understanding. I'll pay you back one day." A single line, no apology, no remorse. I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I wanted to write back something sharp, something to make him feel the weight of what he'd taken. But I didn't, because Kyle never got it. He never had to. Mom always shielded him from consequences. And now, she expected me to do the same. I told Daniel everything, every word, every tone shift, every unspoken expectation. He listened, jaw clenched, his thumb tracing circles into my palm like he was trying to rub the tension away. "We'll figure it out," he said softly. "Whatever you want to do, we'll make it work." And that's when the idea first cracked open. A flicker. What if we played along? What if I gave them exactly what they thought they wanted? A small hall wedding, a modest setup, just a little event that didn't need all the fuss. But then, surprise, what if, on the day, I turned the tables, not to punish them, but to remind myself, and them, who I really was? I pitched the idea to Daniel the next night. A 2-part plan. Send out 2 separate invites, one for the public wedding, a generic town hall location, something forgettable. Then, behind the scenes, plan our real wedding, on an island, a place I had always dreamed about but never thought I'd actually see. We'd fly in our closest friends and the people who had actually supported us, and we'd give my parents exactly what they gave me: confusion, disorientation, and finally, a moment that would make them question everything. Daniel was quiet for a second. Then he looked at me and said, Let's do it. So we started planning 2 weddings. By day, I was emailing local caterers, fake booking decorators, even walking through venues I had no intention of using. I let Mom feel involved. I let her believe the narrative she created. But by night, I was speaking with a travel agent, coordinating with a planner in the Caribbean, picking dresses that would blow her mind. It was exhausting, living a double life. But for the first time in weeks, I felt powerful again. I wasn't just reacting, I was taking back control. They thought they stole my moment. They had no idea what was coming. The first time I saw the island, I cried, not out of sadness, not even joy. Just this strange, overwhelming sense of release, like I was finally breathing after holding my breath for years. It wasn't huge, nothing over the top, just a quiet, private place with turquoise water, palm trees swaying like they were whispering secrets, and a small white archway where we'd say our vows. I didn't want glam. I wanted peace. I wanted beauty, and I wanted it to be mine. As Daniel and I walked the shoreline, hand in hand, waves brushing over our ankles, he smiled and said, "This feels like you." That meant everything. We booked it immediately, 3 weeks out. The plan was set in motion. We would send the official invites to my parents, a few distant relatives, and old family friends for a wedding in a small hall just outside town. Something forgettable, low-key, exactly what my mom had suggested. And we made it look real. The website, the printed invites, even a fake RSVP list. I used a burner email to contact vendors and got quotes just in case my mom snooped. She loved it. "This is so tasteful," she said. "I'm proud of you for being practical." I wanted to laugh, or scream, or both. Meanwhile, our real guest list, those who had been in our corner, who had cheered for us when no one else did, received something very different. A gold-trimmed envelope, hand-delivered with coordinates and a plane ticket. Inside, it said, "Packlight, you're going to paradise. This is the real wedding." People were confused at first. I expected that. But one by one, the calls started rolling in. My best friend Taylor cried on FaceTime. "You're actually doing this?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "I'm done playing small." Daniel's parents were ecstatic. They even offered to cover part of the catering as a gift. As the days ticked by, the contrast between the two worlds grew sharper. In one life, I was walking through second-rate banquet halls with my mother, pretending to be excited about plastic chairs and buffet trays, smiling, nodding, holding back bile. In the other, I was choosing flower arrangements made of wild orchids and local blooms flown in fresh. I was picking sunset ceremony music, practicing vows that made me cry every time I read them out loud. Living in those two realities was exhausting, but it gave me a kind of secret power. I started to realize how often I'd made myself smaller for their comfort, how often I swallowed hurt to keep the peace. Not this time. 1 week before the wedding, I met Mom and Dad for coffee. I watched them sip lattes like nothing had happened, like we weren't pretending this wedding was a happy family event. Kyle didn't even show. Mom started going on about how excited she was to see me walk down the aisle. "Simple weddings are always the sweetest," she said, smiling. I stirred my drink slowly, watching the foam swirl into nothing. "Yeah," I said. "Simple, but unforgettable." And in that moment, something shifted. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was staging something. Not a show. Not revenge. A revelation. I wanted them to look back on this and feel it. Not the wedding, not the photos, but the moment they realized they never really knew me at all. I smiled back at my mother. "We'll see you there." The morning of the wedding, I woke up to sunlight spilling across the white curtains of the island villa. The air smelled like salt and hibiscus. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the waves crashing gently, like they were holding their breath with me. My hands shook slightly as I zipped up my dress. Not from fear, from anticipation. This was it. I looked at myself in the mirror, barefoot, my hair loose in soft curls, the dress flowing like it was made of wind. This wasn't a fairy tale, this was real, raw, quiet, mine. Meanwhile, back in town, my parents had just pulled up to a modest event hall, a brown brick building with a peeling sign and an empty parking lot. No guests, no music, just a sleek black car waiting out front, engine humming softly. Inside, a single man in a suit approached them. Rick and Linda? He asked politely. Yes, my mother answered, glancing around. Where is everyone? The man smiled, handed them an envelope, and gestured to the car. They're waiting. Inside the envelope was a card. Sometimes you have to lose control to see who you've become. Your daughter didn't disappear. She leveled up. Let us show you where she's really getting married. The driver didn't answer their questions. He just smiled and nodded, like he'd been instructed. They were driven an hour out, to a private airstrip, then escorted onto a small private plane. My parents, confused, flustered, still dressed for a budget hall wedding, were flown across the coastline to the island where everything was actually happening. As the plane landed, they looked out the window and saw white chairs set up along a sun-drenched beach, guests dressed in pastels, champagne flutes in hand, a string quartet playing softly under palm trees. My mom's face went pale. Dad sat perfectly still, and then they saw me, standing at the top of the sandy aisle, hand in hand with Daniel, glowing in a way I don't think they'd ever truly seen. Every head turned. Conversations hushed. For a moment, the only sound was the waves and the soft breeze curling through the ceremony space. They walked slowly down the wooden path, completely out of place, Mom in her beige department store dress, Dad sweating through his suit. I watched their eyes scan the scene, trying to make sense of it. I stepped forward. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad, I said softly. Welcome to my wedding. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For once, she didn't know what to say. Rick finally spoke. You did all this? I nodded. With the money I had left, and with help. Real help. Silence. Then my mom blinked, hard. Why didn't you tell us? I smiled just a little. Because you already decided what I could and couldn't have. I just decided I was done asking. The guests watched, quiet, not intruding. But the moment was heavy, sacred. I wasn't trying to shame them. I just wanted them to see. Daniel squeezed my hand. We're about to start, I said. You're welcome to stay. I turned, walked back to the altar. They followed, silently, humbled, changed maybe, but at the very least aware. And as I looked into Daniel's eyes and began my vows, I felt it. Not revenge, not victory, freedom. This was my moment. Not taken, claimed. The ceremony ended just as the sun dipped behind the ocean, painting the sky in streaks of gold and rose. As we walked back up the aisle, barefoot and beaming, the guests erupted in cheers. Laughter, hugs, music. It felt like the version of life I always wanted. One where love wasn't conditional and celebration didn't come with guilt. We danced, we cried. We toasted under string lights as waves whispered just feet away. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to earn my joy. I was allowed to just have it. Later that night, after the cake had been cut and shoes were abandoned in the sand, my mom approached me. She looked smaller, not physically, but emotionally, like the weight of her decisions had finally settled in her bones. I didn't know you had this in you, she said, eyes scanning the glowing island around us. I looked at her for a long second, not with anger, but with clarity. You never looked, I said. She didn't defend herself. She didn't argue. She just nodded. And for once, that silence between us didn't feel like a wall. It felt like the beginning of something real. Dad followed behind her, quieter than usual. He simply took my hand, squeezed it, and whispered, "You did good, kid." That was all I needed. Kyle? He came too. I didn't expect him to, but he did. We hadn't spoken much since the whole thing went down. He stood awkwardly at the edge of the reception, drink in hand, watching the lights reflect off the water. He finally walked over, eyes down. I didn't ask them to do that, he said, but I didn't stop them either. I raised an eyebrow. Because you thought you deserved it? No, he said quickly, then paused. Because I was afraid if I didn't take it, they'd stop protecting me. And I didn't know who I was without that. That caught me off guard. For once, it felt honest. I'm not mad at you, I told him. I just stopped making myself smaller so you could feel big. He nodded. I get that. He left early, quietly. But that conversation, it felt like a shift, maybe a slow one, but a start. As the night faded and the stars blanketed the sky, Daniel and I sat on a bench at the edge of the sand, watching the last of the lanterns drift up into the sky. He rested his head on my shoulder. "Worth it?" he asked. I didn't even hesitate. Every second. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a reclaiming, a declaration that I was done shrinking, that I was done waiting for permission to be celebrated. My family didn't change overnight. I didn't expect them to, but they saw me. Finally, clearly, and that was enough. To anyone watching this who's ever been overlooked, underestimated, or expected to just understand, while others take what you've earned, this is for you. You don't need to yell. You don't need revenge. You just need to rise so boldly they can't help but notice the view from beneath you. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is quietly build the life they told you you'd never need, and then invite them to witness it. So yeah, they took my moment. But I didn't ask for it back. I built a better one, without their permission. And if you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or told to just understand, remember this: you don't need revenge. You need clarity and the courage to choose you.